To everyone out there, my wife and I are headed up to New York for some special members. You can follow along on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn as well this weekend through the raindrops. And the raindrops almost got them on Wednesday night in Game 2 of the World Series. Moved the game back an hour. Good thing they did, based on all the tweets I saw in the postgame of a water-soaked Progressive Field. And the series is progressively getting better. Here to talk all things baseball, as well as get us a Ravens bye weekend update, we welcome our Kimo Sabi and Ravens insider Luke Jones onto the program. You can follow his journey, of course, Luke at WNST.net, as well as Baltimore Luke on Twitter, and he is constantly tweeting and never stopping talking Baltimore sports on our Twitter as well. Luke, pretty good World Series so far, right? I know Game 2 was not legendary, except I did think Jake Arrieta had the possibility to throw a no-hitter in that, and it did keep me awake through it all, but it was slow-moving, but I feel like the series is going to take on a life of its own in Wrigley.
Yeah, I mean, obviously looking forward to seeing World Series games at Wrigley Field. I mean, it's something that has never been seen on television.
We ain't never done that before, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're talking 1945, so plenty of excitement there.
I'm still amazed they play baseball at night there, right? I mean, that's still like a new thing there, right?
Yeah, and it's funny, and you knew it wouldn't happen because it was, I don't think they played a day game in the World Series since, 87, but if you were ever going to do a weekend World Series day game, Wrigley Field would be the place, right? I mean, there's nowhere better than that. But I digress on that.
It would also be 82 degrees, which it's not going to be.
Yeah, so. Exactly. But, I mean, Game 2, not the easiest game to watch. Jake Arrieta pitching well aside, although, his command, there were some stretches through there where the pace kind of dragged on, but you just look at the walks, you look at the strikeouts, and it's really a big picture issue for baseball. With you kind of have the three true outcomes: walks, strikeouts, home runs. How this game has become so much more predicated on that. But overall, I mean, this series, I was very much looking forward to it. Cleveland gets the win in Game 1 with Kluber pitching so well. Game 2, they're kind of wondering how Trevor Bauer would respond after the cut that chased him after just getting 2 outs in the ALCS, and he just wasn't very good. Couldn't command his curveball whatsoever, and the Cubs didn't bust it wide open, but they got enough of an advantage where, as you kind of talked about before we started our discussion, you're kind of waiting for Cleveland to close the gap, and it just never really happened. And the Cubs would just scratch another run across, and then Zobrist triples, Schwarber singles in another run. I mean, what a great story he's been. And, the Cubs just, they were in control over the course of most of Game 2, and they did exactly what they needed to do. As the road team, you start a series on the road, best of 7, you got to split, and then you're coming home for 3. So they're in good position, and certainly when you look at the starting pitching, Cleveland's kind of always eyeing up having Kluber go out there. He's going to pitch Game 4 and Game 7 if necessary. But with Chicago, I mean, it's clear they have the advantage when it comes to the starting pitching, and Jake Arrieta took advantage of that certainly on Wednesday night.
I want to get back to baseball in a couple minutes. Luke Jones, of course, joining us here on WNST. We're tweeting about this, and baseball's the biggest story this weekend. Certainly couldn't come at a better time for the bye weekend all the way around. For Ravens fans who need a break, for the team that definitely needs a break. We saw Harbaugh and Flacco talk about it before they went away for this weekend. That's sort of league mandated. They take a couple of days off anyway. To sit around and watch baseball this weekend without any distraction in the evening for me, college football notwithstanding on Saturday night and the NFL on Sunday, of course, I'll be watching it all. This is a nice little break, and it could, for me, to sit and watch these kinds of games with these kinds of stakes, it's nice. But let's get out to the purple for a second, just update where we are. Obviously, with the Steelers, we're all going to get up early Sunday, which is weird, right? I mean, we're going to be rooting for the Redskins before breakfast on Sunday. It's disgusting, isn't it?
It's really weird. The thought of football in London has, I don't want to say it's grown on me because I don't really care for the idea all that much, especially when you're talking about teams losing a home game for fans who...
Yeah, my wife said, what's going on? I said, the Bengals just give their home game away. She said, wow, okay.
Okay. So, but that issue aside, there is some appeal to having at least a good football game on at 9:30 in the morning. I don't know. Last week it was Giants against Rams.
Well, the problem is Jacksonville is usually involved.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, if you have really good matchups, and this is the same thing with the Thursday night games. We always complain about Thursday night football, and this, you look at this week's matchup, Jacksonville, Tennessee. It's another one.
And the uniforms will be just as bad as that brand of football. I mean, Thursday night's almost like fake football. It's awful. It's absolutely awful.
But in most cases, it's a bad matchup to begin with. And then
thank God for that. I don't want to see the best games played on 3 days rest. I really don't.
Fair enough. But I guess for me, going back to the point of the London games, unless you're going to have good matchups, it kind of feels weird and like just a novelty and kind of fake, like you said, with the Thursday night. But
it feels exhibition-y.
Yeah, no question about it. But in this case, Washington, I mean, they're 4-3. The Bengals, they're trying to get themselves situated here. They've had a pretty difficult early season schedule, but replacing guys like Marvin Jones, and they've had their offensive line issues, and they've had some injuries. Tyler Eifert's barely been on the field for them. So this is a Bengals team that I still think is pretty good. They're clearly not what they were last year. At least they haven't been to this point. But they're a team like the Ravens right now that are just trying to get themselves situated here. And I think they're still capable of making some noise in this division, capable of contending for a playoff spot. Just like, regardless of how anyone wants to feel about it right now, the Ravens are still in that position, regardless of what the eyeball test looks like.
Oh, my God, it's amazing. I've done the math on this. The Steelers aren't playing this week. They're probably playing with Landry Jones next week or some really beaten-up version of Roethlisberger. I think we're going to get a couple of guys back. It's a home game. You beat the Steelers. You own part of first place. You get the Browns a couple days later. You better, beat them. And all of a sudden, everything smells better, especially if Marvin loses this week, right?
Yeah. And look, I mean, it's not a case of, no one's asking you to believe in the Ravens at this point
Fair
if you're a frustrated fan. It's just the reality that they're not out of it. That's the point. I mean, that's you can think they're not going to do much, and personally, I don't have a whole lot of confidence that they are going to do a whole lot.
You think they're going to lose to the Steelers next week? You think that?
Well, is Ben Roethlisberger playing? Tell me what kind of version.
Okay, no, go ahead. And you say what after that?
I mean, if he's not going to, but at the same time, Landry Jones isn't completely incompetent either. And hey, it's Ravens Steelers. Ryan Mallett beat Pittsburgh last year.
Isn't that great?
I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, if the Ravens do get some of these guys back, and Marshall Yanda practiced this week. John Harbaugh said he's expected to be full go next week. Suggs practiced this week during the bye, so he's going to wear a harness, kind of one of those devices, kind of like Ray Lewis did in the postseason a few years back in his final ride. So you get a couple guys like that back, get Steve Smith back, a couple other. Ronnie Stanley's practicing still. So
give me Mosley. He's the big difference maker for me.
I think that's a good point. I think anyone who's looked at the defense has seen the issues they've had in the middle of the field against the Giants, in pass coverage, certainly in the second half, and against the Jets, specifically in the first half. I think Mosley has been an absolute big loss there from a pass coverage standpoint and even the run defense against the Jets. But the point is, get some of these guys back and see what you can do. You got to take it, as cliche as it sounds, it is a one game at a time proposition. You can't improve your record from 3-4 to magically to 5-2 or 6-2 by just winning one game. You win one game, you get yourself back to 500. Win the next week, or win 4 days later, as will be the case, playing the Browns on a Thursday night, and then you'll get another little extra mini bye, and you'll be above 500. So it's
all really hope is not lost, is all I'm saying, right? It's all you're saying. And again, This is not – the Jets are a team that went and got blown out. The Steelers are a team that's gone and got – I mean, the Ravens haven't gotten blown out, but this isn't last year. I mean, last year the wheels came off. We're not at that point yet. We're far from that point because nobody's 6-1 right now.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, the Ravens aren't 1-6 right now. They're not 2-6 right now, where everything was over at that point. And I'm talking even before Flacco got hurt, even before Forsett got hurt. The season was over.
Dude, if Timmy Jernigan falls on the ball, they win, right? I mean, there's so many of those sort of instances that You just can't summarily say they're awful. They're playing awful right now, but I think they're capable of getting better. I certainly think they're capable of running the football at some point. I really do believe that, Luke. I do.
Well, I mean, and that gets to the point that needs to be made before anything else. I mean, we can talk all we want about all the different things plaguing this football team right now. There are a ton of problems. There are. I mean, there's no way to sugarcoat that. As much as I agree with you from the standpoint of, yes, they're not being blown out. Yes, they're playing in close games. They're also not winning those close games because they have all of these problems. But
fair enough.
With the running game, as you just talked about, to me, the first and foremost, you can talk about Flacco, who has not played very well, really hasn't played well in the second half of some of these games over the last 3-4 weeks. You can talk about the running game. You can talk about the secondary giving up some big plays here over the last couple of weeks after that hadn't been a problem. You can talk about the injuries in general, but the biggest key for me is getting that offensive line back in order. If they can do that, that's kind of your linchpin for getting things moving offensively. And look, this defense has been pretty good overall. It's not the 2000 Ravens, it's not the 2006 Ravens, or even the 2011 Ravens, but it's a good defense. I mean, the stats don't lie. It's been a good defense. I don't think it's great, but it's certainly good enough to win.
Minus a couple of big plays, it's been a very good defense, right?
Yeah. So if you get your offensive line in order, and Ronnie Stanley practiced this week, Marshall Yanda practiced this week, they've had 5 different starting offensive lines in their last 5 games. Well, they've lost 4 of those. It's probably not a big surprise then, right? I mean, it's just what they've dealt with. So if they get their original starting lineup, offensive line back, which is Ronnie Stanley at left tackle, I think they feel comfortable moving forward with Alex Lewis as their left guard. I don't think they really loved what they saw from John Urschel there the last couple weeks, and I know we even commented about that on Sunday. You got Zuda at center, Yanda at right guard. We'll see how good Yanda is in terms of his health. I don't know if we're going to see a 100% version of Yanda.
Same thing with Wagner, right? I mean, Wagner's trying to play, but we don't know how healthy he really is, right?
Yeah. So, but the point is, if you have those 5 guys, look, they're not the mid-'90s Dallas Cowboys, but I think it's a capable offensive line. And certainly to what you said about the running game, I think they're capable of running the football at a level that you can get out of this habit of just having Joe Flacco throw 45 times. I mean, I don't care who it is, other than maybe Tom Brady, and the Patriots have had these stretches where they've just said, we're not going to even try to run the football because they either can't or they decide that that's not the best way for them to go. But most quarterbacks, even the best ones, if you're asking them to throw 45, 50 times every week, it's not going to be a pretty outcome. And it's clear it has not been pretty. They need to get it down to a case where Joe Flacco's throwing 35 times, in that range. And sometimes he's going to have to throw more than that, and depending on the element, sometimes he might throw less than that. But it needs
you'd like to think it would be less as the weather gets worse, right? I mean,
exactly.
all the way along the line. I mean, they have a game in Dallas, but they're going to go play in New England on a Monday night in December. All hell breaks loose, anytime the leaves change in New England. You're going to have to go play in Cincinnati. You're going to have to go play in Pittsburgh on Christmas Day. I mean, you're going to have to run the football, period, and stop the run, period. That's the way it's going to have to go from here on out.
It does, and that's not to say that there aren't too many games even late in the season now where you're just going to say, well, we're going to run it 43 times and our quarterback's only going to throw it 18 times.
You better run for more than 6 yards or 10 yards or whatever the hell they adjusted it out to.
Yeah, it got adjusted to, I believe, 11 carries for 11 yards.
Good.
So
Great.
How crazy is that?
I feel so much better
though?
about it now,
You have a statistical adjustment, which happens quite frequently, and they nearly doubled their rushing total as a result. I mean, it's kind of funny now. It wasn't funny on Sunday, but you can kind of look back.
Yeah, I did the driving home. It wasn't funny.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not saying it was at the time, but it's just incredible. But if they can get to the point where they're running the football consistently, again, they don't have to be a top 5 running game, but just to the point where you're taking some pressure off your offensive line to pass protect. I mean, part of the reason that Joe Flacco's been pressured as much as he is it's simple math. You drop back that much, an offensive line, even if they're at full strength, isn't going to be able to hold off a pass rush every single play. I mean, it's just not realistic. So you do the math. You decrease the pressure on him that way. You have a healthier offensive line that hopefully protects better in general, and then if you're getting better pass protection, if you're running the ball more effectively, it sets up play action, and it gives your receivers a better chance to hopefully get into their routes, run better routes, which has been another problem. And then when all of that stuff's taken care of, at that point, and this is the point John Harbaugh made on Wednesday, at that point, it's on Joe Flacco to make plays then, and there's no excuse. Look, the reality is Joe has not played well enough. He admitted that on Wednesday. I think anyone who's seen it, you don't have to even look at the numbers. The numbers have been ugly.
Well, there's no Cam Newton act going on around here. Joe stands up and has accountability, and that's one of the things I love about Joe Flacco is, even when he's losing, he'll, talk the walk and walk the talk. And, he almost has the same personality through it all, which is really it's a benefit to him. I know I saw Hendricks in the dugout the other night with the Cubs talking about the same thing, right?
Yeah. It's clearly a case where he needs to play better, but at the same time, and this is what John Harbaugh said, they need to set him up in a better position to play better. And that doesn't mean everything's going to be perfect. No one's saying that the offensive line has to have a 100% blocking grade. That's not going to happen. No one's going to say that the receivers are going to get 5 yards of separation on every play. No one's going to say that they have to average 7 yards per carry. They just need to be better in those areas. And then it is squarely on the shoulders of number 5. He does have to play better, but give him a little more of a chance to play better. And then the pressure is on him as your franchise quarterback making a lot of money. But there's just been a lot going on around him that hasn't helped him. But as I think it is fair to point out, all the other problems don't necessarily involve him, but he does need to be more of an answer for this offense than he's been over the last month, and I'll stand by that. He hasn't played well enough, but it needs to be a across-the-board team effort, including Marty Morningwig figuring some things out to kind of implement in this offense to get it turned around after what was just a horrendous month of October.
Long weekend off for the Ravens. I don't know that anybody's feeling real good about going to the beach this weekend out in Owings Mills. Tough times out there. Obviously, the biggest game of the season next week. Pittsburgh Steelers coming in as well. And we got big doings around here. My wife's donor is coming to town. We're throwing a party on November 12th. I want to invite everybody down on that. Nasty at WNST.net. If you want to stop down to the party at Roost Chris Pier 5, we'd appreciate that. We're doing that for There Goes My Hero for the DKMS. We're in New York all weekend. I'll be watching the World Series as well. The Ravens are scattered throughout the land and families and take a little downtime here as league mandated. We'll be up early in the morning watching the Cincinnati Bengals and the Redskins. I think I said the Steelers are playing the Redskins at some point this weekend. If I did, I apologize, but it is the Bengals. We'll be up nice and early hating on the Bengals, and the Steelers take the weekend off, and the Bengals get next weekend off after the long bye as well. Meanwhile, we're watching the World Series. I want to get back to that, Luke. Anything more you want to say on the Ravens? You want to talk some baseball? Because this might be our last chance to talk about baseball without bitching about the Orioles in the offseason. Because about 2 weeks from now, the old Matt Wieters, conversation is going to come up again, and the Mark Trumbo we're going to be into that very, very shortly. Meantime, we actually have strategy in Madden and Tito and pitchers and bullpens and Wrigley Field and Goats and Bartmans. And, I still think the Indians are going to win. How about that?
Yeah, they have every chance to win. I think if you looked at it on paper, you'd have to say the Cubs are the favorite, and I think most people felt that way, and I think most of what you saw reflected that. But this is an Indians team that has been very much underrated, really throughout the season. You look at their offense. It's not the conventional power offense that a lot of teams like the Orioles, like the Blue Jays, like even Boston had the best offense on the planet this year, but they're a good base running team. They have some high contact guys, which kind of reminds you a little bit of the formula Kansas City used with their lineup the last few years. But they were productive in that regard. And we've talked so much about Andrew Miller. I think one of the lost stories in Game 1 with Cleveland winning was they were the one thing the Cubs were able to do despite the loss. They made Andrew Miller work so hard that he was kind of. I know Terry Francona said that he might have been available for a batter or two in Game 2, but clearly they never had a situation where it made sense. But they took Andrew Miller out of play for Game 2 largely, so that was an advantage for them. I'm fascinated right now to see how Cleveland is going to get through what you assume is going to be a deep series. We know going in to the weekend. Teams are 1-1, so it's at the very least it's going 5, and if it's going longer than that, how does Cleveland get through with their rotation? I mean, they're pitching Kluber on 3 days rest. I believe they're going to do the same with Bauer. I mean, they don't have a whole lot in their rotation right now because of the injuries that they had late in the season. So it's fascinating to see that at work, with the idea that anyway in the postseason, you're not having your pitchers generally or your starters generally going 100 pitches anyway unless they're pitching that well. So it's interesting to see that strategy used with a bullpen that we know Francona has used. Even look at Wednesday night, used, 6 relievers after Bauer was lifted in the 4th inning, and that's, they were losing. So it didn't work out real well, but it just shows how Francona's tried to kind of maneuver through these games with clearly Allen and Miller being his big horses. So I'm intrigued to see that. I'm intrigued with the whole Cleveland-Chicago thing anyway. As I said to you a few days ago when we talked about this, any baseball fan under the age of 70,
you can't hate on these teams, dude, right?
Yeah, you just name...
There's nothing to hate. There's nothing to hate about this. There's no bad guys. There's no fight starters. It's just, 2 great managers. The game's played right. I said to Alan, if you're showing a child, if little Luke or little Nestor's watching this, and your dad who loved baseball and my dad who loved baseball, my dad coached baseball, managed baseball, took incredible pride in managing, winning baseball teams and teaching me the right way to play the game, and I was a catcher, and, hitting the cutoff, man, getting the bunt down, playing good defense, all of that stuff, being a well-rounded hitter. Everybody wants to be George Brett and hit doubles and triples and home runs and play the field. And I like all of these players. I saw Chisenhall make this unbelievable play. I think Arrieta's a bulldog. Obviously, this kid slices his hand open. He's out there trying to get it done. I love that the Indians were freaky-deakying Lester on the hill the other night, who's scared to death to throw to first base. It's crazy, right?
Oh, the Lester thing is just bizarre.
It's weird, man.
It is bizarre. It's one thing if you make a shaky throw or two over to first. It's one thing if you don't throw over if a guy kind of has a borderline lead. But when you're seeing that a guy, all you have to do is just practically lob it over there, and you're picking off a runner, and you won't do it. It's just incredible.
What will Jim Palmer say about this?
Right? Buck Showalter, I can tell you, would absolutely. Buck is so bullish on
holding runners,
plate,
right? Yeah,
keeping runners keep holding runners on base. He is absolutely bullish on that kind of stuff. So it'd be interesting if Buck Showalter were managing John Lester. At the same time, John Lester, Game 1 aside, such a good postseason pitcher. Everyone's talked about Bumgarner over the last several years, and rightfully so. He's been historically good. But Lester's numbers going into Game 1, pretty good as far as his postseason career. Pretty impressive. But the other thing we didn't even mention about Roberto Perez, a catcher who hit 183, hits 2 home runs in Game 1 of the World Series. That's Rick Dempsey-like right there. There's so many great storylines involved in this game. And one of those, and I don't know if you saw it, but Major League Baseball tweeted out during Game 1, this was the first time since Game 4 of the 1970 series, Orioles-Reds, the Game 4 when Palmer pitched, that there were 6 players in the starting lineups under the age of 25.
Right.
And I just thought that absolutely is such a neat statistic, and it really reflects, as much as we talk about the problems in baseball, there are plenty. You talk about how late these games are on.
They started the game Wednesday night an hour early. It felt like it ended an hour late.
Yeah,
it was crazy.
Pace of play is something that's been talked about a lot, will continue to be talked about. We can get into that at another time. But just the fact that you have so many great young players in the game, period, and certainly we've seen Manny Machado here in Baltimore, Jonathan Scope, Kevin Gausman, Dylan Bundy. The Orioles have a lot of really exciting young players that we've watched over the last couple years and watched them grow. But you look in this game, all of the youth that the Cubs have, and with Cleveland, I've told you, Francisco Lindor is one of my favorite young players in the game. I know he idolizes Roberto Alomar, the reason why he wears number 12. But to see so many of these young players in the Fall Classic, It's really exciting, and it's been it's been really entertaining to watch both these teams throughout October, and looking forward to the weekend, rest of this series. I mean, and there's just something really just amazing. You think of these two teams being the losers of losing baseball for decades and decades, and in the Cubs' case, over a century.
Dude, if the Cubs can't win in 5, I don't even want to see them win. I don't want to see the Cubs win in Cleveland. You know what I mean?
I know. Oh no, I totally agree with you on that.
That's not the way the movie's supposed to go, Luke.
I totally agree with you on that.
I want to see Jake Behringer in the little golf cart with the Wahoo hat on it.
I want to see,
Rene Russo run it down. That's what I want to see.
I mean, if it is the Cubs, I want to see Wrigleyville going nuts like it was when they won the LCS. And if it's Cleveland, I want to see Cleveland win it at home. I mean, there's been something cool. I know you're not a big LeBron James fan, but there's been something cool about seeing him at so many of these Indians games. They got their rings the other night. There's as much as we make fun of Cleveland, and rightfully so. I mean, God, the Browns are on 6 quarterbacks in 7 weeks. I mean, it's just unthinkable. I don't know how that happens.
Who is their quarterback? I mean, is Brian Sipe available?
I know, right? They're going to bring back Charlie Fry or someone like that. But it's just there's something neat about what's going on in Cleveland from basketball, and what a great story that was with overcoming the 3-1 deficit.
You and I have a soft spot for Cleveland. We just do. I mean, I don't hate Cleveland. I can't hate. They gave me the Ravens.
I was just going to say, I mean, I don't understand why anyone has any reason in Baltimore to hate Cleveland. I mean, I guess if you're...
Be like the people in Indianapolis hating Baltimore after they stole our team. I mean, they stole their team. Don't hate on them,
Right. I mean,
you don't need to hate your wife's ex-husband. You don't need to do that.
I mean, I can understand, some of the personal things said about Art Modell and everything. I get that, but at the same time, the same thing was said about Robert Irsay here in Baltimore, and still is to this day.
I'm through all of that. My issues with LeBron are about the decision.
Oh, sure.
And, I'm sure LeBron's a good guy. I mean, I can kind of tell he's a good guy. I can also tell he's grown up a little bit. That I think it's different between being 20 and being 30. And, I've tried to see that in Ray Lewis and Ed Reed. Other people who know me have tried to see that in me because I've been doing this for 25 years in front of people, right? So we all like to think that you're getting better, not worse, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Randy Moss is doing television, for crying out loud, right?
If you're not growing as a person as you get older, then something's wrong. So, but no, just getting back to the Cleveland. I mean, there's just something really interesting about that. It had been since '64 that they had a major professional championship. They get one with the Cavs, and now the Cleveland now going into the weekend at Wrigley Field. They got a chance. The Indians got a chance to win their first since '48. I mean, it's really neat. And as you said, I mean, this is just such a good matchup that I've enjoyed because I don't have any disdain for either team, and I like how both teams play the game. I mean, there's just so much young talent. 2 managers I have a lot of respect for.
Yeah, this makes you like baseball more. Me. Some nights I sit around in the summer, especially given the Orioles' disposition, not only toward me, but, I mean, Comcast Sportsnet pulled baseball. I'll get into that later. I'm putting a moratorium on the Angelo stuff at least till the season's over. I just want to enjoy the last week of baseball. This is nice. It is nice watching good baseball and good managing without all the nonsense and watching guys work count. I mean, doing all the stuff that we sit here all summer and we bitched about what the Orioles didn't do well to some degree on the nights they didn't do it well. And in the end, it wound up costing them because you can't slug your way and not pitch your way into this position. This is a beautiful thing. These are the best teams.
And, I mean, as far as working counts, I mean, the Cubs did that so incredibly well. Rizzo and Zobrist and Schwarber, and we haven't talked a whole lot about Schwarber. I mentioned it in passing, but that's another great story. I mean, here's a kid who tore 2 knee ligaments the first week of the season. You just assume he's going to be out for the year, and he makes it back, and he's not only playing, but he's he was one of the big heroes of Game 2, and hit one off the wall in Game 1. I mean, it's just another. I mean, that's a great sports story right there. I mean, we can think about some of the more heroic in-season returns. Ray Lewis a few years back. You think of Rod Woodson years ago for the Steelers playing in the Super Bowl after hurting his knee early in the season. I mean, so things like that have happened. But for in this case, where you're talking about Schwarber being such a young kid, I mean, doesn't have a ton of experience, and for him to do what he's done, it's just that's been another really neat stories. So, I mean, there's just been so many different layers to this World Series that I've really enjoyed, even if the games have gone a little long.
I wanted to go 7, bro, and extra
no
innings,
doubt.
right? I mean, like, to me, this deserves that. I'm holding Tuesday and Wednesday and hoping good things happen. That's all I
really hope so, too. And I mean, as far as what you said, if the Cubs win, you'd like it to be at Wrigley, yeah. But at the same time, I want to see a Game 7 in general. I mean, regardless of who wins, I want to see a Game 7 because, I mean, these two teams, the Cubs have been the favorite all year long from the standpoint that they just, ran wild all over the National League, whereas Cleveland didn't get a whole lot of credit over the course of the year, but there was a reason why they had the second, they were the number 2 seed in the AL, and the fact that they controlled that division in the Central. I mean, that's a darn good baseball team, and really looking forward to the rest of this series, no doubt about it.
Two old souls here talking about playing the game the right way. He's Luke Jones, Luke at WNST.net, Baltimore Luke out on Twitter as well. I'm in the Bahia Toyota Audio Vault all weekend long. If you missed anything here all week, and we play our best stuff on Saturdays and Sundays as well. Dennis will be around on Thursday driving you home on the SSV on WNST. And, of course, our text service will keep you abreast of anything happening. If there's any updates, we don't expect much out of the Ravens this weekend, quite frankly, through the weekend. If there's any news on bye weekends, probably not good news, probably a text you don't want to have this weekend. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Don't forget our morning newspaper ships to you at 7 a.m. each and every morning, and that is brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. We'll be at Buffalo Wild Wings on Monday night for Monday Night Football, doing our best seat in the house promotion along with our friends from Fully Loaded Transportation, as well as our blazing wing-eating challenge at halftime on Monday night, so come on out and join us. Meanwhile, a lot of baseball, a lot of social media all weekend long. I'll be in New York with my wife, Nasty at WNST.net, reaches me. Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on Facebook Live, as well as on our YouTube WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.